Hello, everyone. So thank you so much for joining. My name is Gergana Ivanova, and I'm from the Smart Pricer team. Hope you see me well, you hear me well. Now we are going to start with the webinar. Patrick from Celluliod Junkie, who's also our co-host, happy to have guests waiting. So first of all, welcome to everyone. Very happy that you're here. We saw the appetite for the topic. For the power of pricing, and this is why we decided to co-host together with Celluliod Junkie, with Patrick and the team, such a webinar. Today we have over 30 professionals from all around the world, so for some of you it's good afternoon, for some of you it's good morning. Happy to have you, and how we would proceed forward. On one side, we would tell you a couple of details about the technical part, how you can approach us, how you can also send us your questions, and then we would proceed with the agenda and a discussion. So talking about the technical part, I would now hand over to Patrick from our team, head of marketing, who will tell you a couple of details.
All right, so also welcome from me. Happy that you're all attending our webinar. I just want to let you know, if in case you have any audio problems with the computer sound, you can also call in by your phone by using one of the numbers from the locations or searching for the number for your own location and enter the webinar ID. So this will fix audio problems if there are any. And also, if you have any questions already during the webinar, during the presentation, please feel free to send me an email or send me an SMS or call me. And you can also use the chat function to write down any questions, any comments you have, and we will consider them in our webinar. And just a side note from me as well, we will record the webinar, so please be aware of this. That we will record it and we will upload it later for everyone who wants to see it again after the webinar is done. All right.
Great. All right. So moving forward with the agenda for today, we have about 50 minutes left. How we would like to use this time on one side is to introduce you to the price of, to the world of price differentiations. What are the different options? Where do you usually start if you're a smaller cinema? Where do you usually end up? What is our experience with this? Then we will move towards best practices from around the world and also from other industries. So what can we learn from other industries? What are the best practices? And of course, at the end, a discussion with Patrick from Celluliod Junkie. Hopefully we can fix the audio and answering your own questions that you can send through the chat. So before I start telling you about, I start telling you about the world of price differentiation and the power of pricing, I wanted to share with you about Cine Europe. So some of you probably were there. We saw each other also with some of you over there in beautiful Barcelona. So Cine Europe 2019. This is how me and Patrick went there, flying over. We arrived in sunny Barcelona at different times, but on the same route. And the question that I was asking myself was, why did I pay 200 euros? And why did Patrick pay 300 euros? So we ended up on the same route, but we paid different prices. So the question arises, why do two different people pay on the same route pay a different price? And the answer to this is customer segmentation. Airlines have been very advanced already in the world of customer segmentation, of price segmentation. And how do they actually segment? On one side, this can be done by product, statically by product. So you can have the first class with a bright palette of entertainment, with bigger seats. This is on one side, or you can have the economy class. You still get to the destination you want, but it's just statically differentiated by product. So you have the choice as a customer to choose, do I want to be in the economy class or in the business class? So it's a different experience that I get. This already, we can link it easily to cinema with the different products, with the 2D experience, with the 3D, 4D premium formats. And the second way how airlines differentiate or segment their customers is dynamically and by booking behavior. So this on one side, for example, I booked my flight 2 months in advance. I booked a low demand flight. So I flew on Thursday morning because I also wanted to enjoy Barcelona a bit more. So I paid 200. Whereas Patrick booked late, even though he knows that every year it's in Europe, but he booked late and he booked a high demand flight. So what I'm trying to convey here is that by differentiating your prices on one side by product and on the other side using data and looking at the booking behavior of the customers, you give them choice, you give them more choice, and you give them the flexibility to make their own decisions, and you take into consideration the customer behavior. So before we talk about demand-based pricing and the trend of demand-based pricing in cinemas, I wanted to show you briefly what the different levels of pricing are currently that we've seen. On one side, we have the static pricing, where here you see the annual booking curve. You see the annual ticket sales as the silver line, which has its peaks and its drops. All of us saw what happened with Avengers, where ticket sales were mostly at the top. And then there are also the slower seasons, depending on the content, depending on the holidays, and many other factors where the ticket sales are just lower than the peaks. And then in the static world, in the static pricing, we see one constant price for either age category or by differentiated only by adult, child. So this is one level. Then we have the differentiated pricing, where we have different price levels for the different products, for the different age groups, and other dimensions. Happy to share a couple of examples later on in the presentation. And the most sophisticated one that is out there, not only in cinema, but in a lot of other industries, such as hotels, car rentals, airlines, museums, theaters. A lot of the entertainment business is already doing that, is the so-called dynamic pricing, where not only the ticket sales have their peaks and drops, but the price curve, the price levels follow that curve. So the price changes based on the demand. Important here to note is that usually dynamic pricing could be real time, it could change every second, but it could also be predefined price levels that based on the attendance, based on the demand prediction, one of those levels is then loaded. What's the difference between those? Well, on one side is that static pricing is the easiest one because you don't change a lot. You maybe do once per year, inflation increase by a few percent points. Other than that, you don't need a lot of data. So other than that, you can take a look at the data, but for pricing decisions, you don't need to use that much data. When it comes to differentiated pricing, what we have seen also in the cinema business is that cinema chains take a look at the data, of the historical data once per year or every 6 months, and then they make decisions based on the strategic points and based on the cornerstones of the company. What do I want to achieve, and how can I support doing that through pricing? And the dynamic pricing, the last level, there the data feed that you need and the historical data that is usually used is at least once per day. So the other difference in those price levels is also the achieved results. So with static pricing, I like to call it the autopilot because you have it, it's easy to maintain, there is nothing bad in it, it's static, the customers are aware of at every point there is transparency, but it's also the autopilot. There is it's a bit more difficult to take a look at what happened and how can we actually react to different demands and how can we react to different products. Differentiated pricing, on one side, we've seen, especially in the cinema industry, that there could be a revenue increase. And depending on the strategic goal that the company has set, there could be either increased attendance or the online sales can be incentivized. So here in the differentiated pricing world, it really depends on the particular goal. And in the dynamic pricing world, in our experience, the revenues grow sustainably plus 5 to 10%. The online shares are also incentivized, the pre-bookings as well. And there we see a slight shift towards off-peak attendance. So the off-peak means Tuesday, Wednesday, it means the shows with slightly lower demand or the days with slightly lower demand, we see a slight shift towards those where possible. Now, coming to a couple of examples for each particular level, I want to start with the Zoo of Berlin. It's one of my favorite places here in Berlin where Smart Pricer is also based. Why? Because we have beautiful pandas there and I like bringing my family there from time to time. The Zoo of Berlin is also, according to Google, one of the most visited zoos in Europe, with 3.5 million visitors per year. So how do they price? They have one price for adults, one price for the children ticket, and one for the students. So it's simple, it's transparent. No matter if you go on Monday or you go on Saturday, you get the same price. This on one side is beautiful because it's easy. It's easy for the zoo, it's easy for the people. On the other side, some challenges that are there is that on Wednesday, there is almost nobody at the zoo, not even the tourists. So the attendance is very, very low. Whereas on Saturday, Sunday, of course, the holidays also, the attendance is very, very high. So in order to see the panda, you need to wait 30 minutes. In order to go into the zoo, you need to wait 30 minutes. So a couple of challenges that are there is that it's difficult to actively manage the capacity. It's difficult to also understand the customer behavior because most of the sales are last moment. They're at the box office. People are not incentivized to buy online because I have the same price. So those are some of the challenges of the static world. Again, it's easy to maintain, but it also creates some challenges depending on the strategy. Another example from the zoo world, Indianapolis in the US, also quite a big and popular zoo. What we found out there on my last vacation when I was there is that, let me just move this lower. What I found out when I was there, I can easily go online. I see the price for each day, which is different. It's similar to each other, but I can choose whether I go on Wednesday and I pay $11.95 or whether I go on Saturday. Now, of course, maybe I cannot go on the Wednesday, but I can maybe shift slightly. So it gives transparency on one side through color coding. And on the other side, the customer also has the choice as to when they would like to go, as to how they would set up. I can still go on Saturday and pay slightly less if I can go 1 week later. So this transparency is something very important in our experience with customer communication of whatever price scheme there is and whatever price changes they are. Moving on to the entertainment industry. A month ago, I was in Amsterdam and I wanted to visit 2 attractions, one of which was the Heineken Experience, where you can see how they brew the beer, you can walk around, talk to the people. So I noticed, looking at their website, if I book online, I can save 3 euros. This, for me, as a customer, gives me the choice to first book online, not wait on the queue, get a favorable discount, and all of the other things that come usually with this experience. So again, transparent communication, and in this case, Heineken has the goal to increase the online sales and the pre-bookings, and through giving an incentive to the customers, they can achieve that. The other location and attraction that I mentioned that I really wanted to visit in Amsterdam was Madame Tussauds. So what I did, I went to the website, again, same thing. I saw here I get €5 discount. If I book online, I can get the €5 discount, which is around 20%. I can go on the weekday or on the weekend. So on one side, I'm incentivized to pre-book and to do it online. And on the other side, I'm incentivized to combine. So I might want to go to a couple of other places. So when I combine, I can get a much favorable price. So this example from the entertainment, on one side, incentivizing online pre-sales, on the other side, product combos, is very powerful. And it's also something that has been live in cinemas for some time now. And here the link, just wanted to show you an example from Cineplex in Mannheim, Cineplex in Germany. So they have a different price. If you look at their price card, this is the adult ticket. So when you're in Mannheim, you have the choice. Do I go and wait on the line to get my ticket, or do I do it online and save €1? So depending on in which group, age group I am, I get either 50 cents or €1 discount in case I pre-booked online. So this, to me, as a customer, as a moviegoer, it gives me the flexibility to go easily online, to book, save some money, and still get a great experience because I'm not waiting. This on one side as a customer. On the other side, as the cinema chain, there is the reducing of operational costs. So when I know how many people have pre-booked online, I can also adjust how many people I have in the cinema. Do I need 10 people at the box office, or do I just need 1? And of course, the pre-bookings and the online sales gives the industry the chance, and the cinema the chance to understand better the moviegoer behavior, so that they can adjust, so that they can market better, so that they can price better, and in general base their decisions on data. Moving to the bundling world, one example from Australia, Village Cinemas with 700 screens in Australia. Something interesting that I noticed on their booking flow is that when you're on the website, you choose your movie, you choose the day, you choose your seat at some point, and the next step of the booking flow is actually to choose your treats. So save money, the message is save money by buying food and drink packages online. So this incentivizes me because it's it's the next logical step of my booking flow before I go out. I can choose to proceed to payment, but I can also go and choose save some money. There is a positive message. So through incentivizing this, I can also even better optimize first of all, my concession sales, so I can know better what to order in advance, again, with the operational cost and the personnel. And it's much more transparent also for the moviegoer. Another example, best practice, what I call peak versus off-peak pricing. Empire State Building in the US. You can go and enjoy the beautiful view from the 86th floor, from the main deck. And again, you have the choice. I see this beautiful calendar here as a customer, and based on when I would like to go, I pay either $36 or $40. I've chosen here the calendar for December this year. So what they did is they did an analysis on the historical data, and they said, okay, from the 21st of December until the 31st, as well as on the 1st of December, there is historically there is always high attendance. It's always full. So scrapping a little bit, skimming the willingness to pay, we can put the price $40. Whereas on the days where where they analyzed and realized that the attendance is still high but slightly lower, and they would like to shift attendance towards those days, they set a slightly lower price, 10% lower. So again, transparent communication on one side, giving the choice to the customer, and at the same time with the goal of shifting customer behavior. This in a different form, of course, we also see in cinema. An example from Cinemax in Germany, a location in Würzburg, a beautiful little town in Bayern with 130,000 people. What we see there when we take a look at the website, transparent communication on one side of the price list. Again, you have the different age groups, the adult, the students, the children, and here, instead of calendar, because the cinema industry, of course, it's different, it's per show, the price is per show. Then we have Monday to Wednesday, the demand historically has been lower, so it's the off-peak time, Monday to Wednesday, so there is one price for all of those groups. And Thursday to Sunday, when historically it's the peak time, it's when you go to the cinema on your spare time on the weekends, the price is slightly higher. This on one side, and on the other side, we also have price differentiation. We see here according to the different format, according to where you would like to sit in the auditorium. Sitting closer to the screen has a lower price, whereas the best seats in the back have a slightly higher price. As well as what kind of experience do I get, the recliners or do I get the regular seats? So again, transparency and the choice, giving the choice to the customer of the experience. What I'm trying to convey here with all of those examples, as I've also mentioned a couple of times, is on one side, having data. We do have a lot of data in the industry, and some chains, a lot of chains worldwide have been using the data to understand better the customer behavior, to adjust to that in order to provide a better experience both for the moviegoers and both to improve the operational side of the cinema. So basing decisions on data, it's quite important from that reason, and we really believed in that as Smart Pricer. Moving towards the demand-based pricing, which is the third level, as I showed you, where the price potentially changes because of the different demand and because of a prediction of this demand. We have seen it already for decades in the different industries. On one side, in airlines, as I showed you, car rentals, public transportation, hotels, but it's also in many other industries that have been more traditional. One of those, cinema. Other industries like theme parks, Disneyland in the US has been doing dynamic pricing for several years now. Opera and theater, concerts, ski lifts. So those industries, they are different on one side, but they also have commonalities. What are those commonalities? First of all, they sell tickets, all of them. Second of all, there is a particular capacity, there is a fixed capacity. So when you go to the theater, there is a fixed capacity. When you go to the museum, only particular number of people can go through this museum on the particular day. Same with the stadium. You can fit, let's say, 20,000 people in the stadium. Ski lifts, we are not used to thinking for ski lifts as if they would have capacity, but they actually do, because you cannot onboard more people than a particular amount per day. So those industries on some level are similar. At the same time, they also have their specific capacities where opera, theater, and concerts are usually with high capacity, where you have 70, 80% sometimes booked out. Cinema, we see that for blockbusters as well. Some of the sports and museums, depending on the sport club, depending on the museum, sometimes you have 50. The average for the industries is around 40-50% attendance, average attendance. Cinemas and skis are usually on the lower end, where we have an average of those industries around 20-30%. Of course, we have the blockbusters like Avengers, where the first 2 weeks are booked out completely, where everything is full, but we also have the lower seasons. So coming to the question, why even change pricing to a more dynamic world? We took a look how the ski industry was 50 years ago. And what we've seen and what also some of us remember is that the tickets were paper tickets, they were physical. And the experience was also very different than what it is today. Today, when I want to buy my ticket for the ski lift, I don't go to queue on the line. I just buy it online. I buy it quickly on my phone, and also the experience that I get today, it's slightly different. I get newer skis, I take more photos. So the technology on one side has enabled us to achieve much more. And a best practice from automated pricing in the beautiful region of St. Moritz in Engadin. Through dynamic pricing, they have seen a huge shift towards the online world, because ski lifts, also as cinema, is a more traditional industry where people usually buy their tickets for, or they pre-book their hotels months in advance. But the ski pass, for the ski lift, you buy in the last minute. So what they saw over there in Switzerland is that through transparent communication, through showing how much the price is at a particular time, and through the positive message of book early and benefit, they saw 6 times higher online sales. Now, I should also say it used to be 5%, and it went to 30%. So 6 times higher online sales just in one season. So the results are astonishing, how much you can achieve through transparent communication and through differentiation of prices, because on one side you offer lower prices than what they used to be before. On the other side, you also skim the willingness to pay when it's the peaks. And also linking to cinema and how this could work in our industry. So this is an example from Russia, Cinema Park. the biggest cinema chain in Russia with approximately 700 screens, 600 screens. So what we did with them is we introduced dynamic pricing and we trialed it at several locations. So what exhibitors usually do on one side, first, always understand the data. So we did a 360 degrees analysis, understood the customer behavior, what has happened historically, what are the patterns of customer behavior, and we simulated what it could look like depending on different strategies, depending on different approaches through dynamic pricing. Again, depending on the strategy and the goal. Then defining this pricing strategy and setting a goal, quite important. What do we want to achieve through this pricing? A lot of cinemas are asking themselves, what can I achieve through that differentiated pricing? Should I even do this? Yes, there are a lot of positive results. And as a third step, installation of software, linking it so that everything works, and the efficient communication. So marketing, again, the transparent message. So my favorite probably word, customer communication. Here is how Cinema Park in Russia communicated it very transparently with color coding, again, with different colors. Green is for minus 20% discount, yellow for minus 10% discount from what it used to be before, and white is the new regular price. So 3 preset ticket types. Big posters on the website saying buy early, book early, and save more. Then again, online is great, but also when you communicate it through all of your sales channels, when you put big posters in the cinema, you can also educate people. Next time, come online and you can save up to 20% in this case. Color coding at the box office again. And here also maybe a very brief video as to how this dynamic pricing looked for one movie, The Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's a Saturday, and here on the top you would see how the days will start to change soon from Monday to Saturday. So from Monday until the day of the showing, and we have all of the shows from 10 a.m. until 11 p.m., 12 p.m. a.m. So it's second week since the release, and now when I started, you see having the green ones, so the super saver, and as the days go by, slowly the algorithm predicts more people will come, more people have started buying the tickets. All the factors that play into this help the algorithm to say, now we need to switch to the slightly higher price. So in this case, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Saturday, on the day of the showing, all of the shows went to the regular price. There are different settings how you can do this. In this sense, the message is clear. Buy earlier, buy online, and you can save up to 20%. So the key takeaways that I have for you, and that I've also mentioned a couple of times. On one side, customer segmentation. We really believe that customer segmentation means more choice for the moviegoers. Differentiating on one side by product, what we already do in the industry, but also by booking behavior, by looking at the historical data. On the second part, simulating and basing the pricing decisions on data. And the third one, being transparent and actively communicating new models, any kinds of changes internally, both in your company and also to the moviegoers. At the end, I really personally believe, and we as a company, Smart Pricer, we really believe that transparent communication is important. And both differentiated pricing and dynamic pricing could be, when communicated correctly, of a win-win. It could be a win-win situation, both for the moviegoers and for the cinemas, and at the same time, obviously, also for the distributors. So one last slide from my side, Smart Pricer and the ways how we usually do help exhibitors. So on one side, we have consulting and analytics, where we help cinemas to challenge what they're doing today, taking into consideration the customer behaviors and patterns from the past, and analyzing those, as well as giving actionable recommendations for the future, what could be improved, as well as dynamic pricing, which is our also core product, where we could do it either automatically or semi-automatically, and base the price levels dependent on how many people will come to the particular show. So this is one last thought from my side. Now, as mentioned, you can send your questions via the chat if you haven't done so yet. I will also open. Yeah. All right. So feel free to send your messages through the chat, or you can send them via mail to Patrick from our team, or you can call and also ask those questions. Now we are going to Patrick, I can see the chat. Maybe before we start with the questions from all of you, or the most frequently asked questions, I have actually one question to Patrick from Celluliod Junkie. Great to have you back. Maybe one question to you as the cinema guru in this great industry. Do you see a shift towards a more data-based decision making?
Yes. Can you hear me, Gergana?
Yes, I can hear you.
Super. First of all, thank you for a great presentation. You really gave us a lot of detail there, so I think that's appreciated by everybody on the line. In terms of the acceptance, yes, there's definitely obviously an increased awareness of the importance of data for consumer insights and for driving increased sales. And dynamic pricing is obviously part of that mix. Now, it's not the only one. Some exhibitors are trying discounting, other ones are trying subscription schemes, but dynamic pricing is definitely one of the hot topics now for cinemas, trying to understand how they can better tap into audience demand, latent audience demand that's there. So yes is the short answer.
Yes, that's also our experience, but wanted to see what you also think about the topic, and very curious as to what other trends do you see, and what other trends have we adopted from different industries, in your opinion?
Well, like I said, the three trends right now, I think, are dynamic pricing, discounting, which is mainly being rolled out by View cinemas in the UK and across Europe. And of course, we've seen that AMC has had a big success with the unlimited scheme of subscription, and looking like it'll be followed by Regal, whose parent company Cineworld has been running it for a long time. But what I wanted to know from you, and before we get into any questions, is really, if I was a cinema chain, that I would probably have three questions which you've touched upon, but if you could get into a bit more depth. The first of all is a simple one. How much more money can I expect to make from dynamic pricing? And secondly, the fear is that isn't there going to be a pushback from audiences, and secondly from distributors as well?
All right, so I understood what are the results from dynamic pricing as one, and then audiences and...
So I don't know if you can hear me, Gergana, but yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
All right, great. So understood.
I can hear you.
Great. Understood. What are the results from dynamic pricing? So to answer this, on one side, we have seen, again, communication, very important. But what we've seen in the correct implementation of dynamic pricing in cinemas is that you can achieve +5 to 10% on top of your revenues, which gives you the flexibility to also then invest, renovate more, and do all of the other projects that are out there. Coming to other results, on one side, again, it really depends on the strategic goals. Online shares is something that we've seen being as a high priority for a lot of cinemas. So dynamic pricing really helps there. Online sales on one side and pre-bookings. And there we've seen 5 to 10% points higher online sales and pre-bookings. And the third one is a slight shift towards off-peak times. Of course, if I'm working, I cannot go instead of Saturday evening to a Tuesday morning show. That's obvious, so it's not a great shift, but it's still through giving the choice to the moviegoers. It's you're able to shift slightly that behavior. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to manage your capacity more actively, to plan the operational costs through those pre-bookings, to know how many people you need in the cinema on the particular day for the particular show. So the results we've seen, not only through dynamic pricing, but also through differentiated pricing are great. And this is why we also believe in the power of pricing. Now, coming to the audience responses, transparent communication. That's all I can say. Transparent communication of the rules on one side and giving incentives to people, not only going up with the price, but also going down with the price so that people are not upset. We've seen also different examples of implementing dynamic pricing and going just up. All kinds of new changes to this industry and to other entertainment industries that we've seen is through giving incentives, through explaining what's going on to the customer and internally. So the audience response that we've seen is positive because customers know it from other industries. As I mentioned some of them. Interesting to hear is also your opinion, as you also travel a lot around the world and speak with a lot of exhibitors. How do you perceive, on one side, the exhibitor appetite for this, and on the other, the audience response?
Two things there. I think cinemas are a bit, they understand the concept of dynamic pricing because we've all encountered it when booking a flight ticket, as you correctly identified at the beginning of the presentation. But they are worried that their customers still have this old mindset that they are used to always paying, €7 for a cinema ticket, and that there will be confusion, especially if they come up to the box office and physically buy a ticket and see that the price is €8.50 now, whereas when they came by on Tuesday afternoon, it was €6. So they fear a customer backlash. And I think, as you correctly identified, transparency is really the key. And I like the slide where you had the display from Kino Park in Russia, where they showed on the board electronically, these are the cheap times, these are the more expensive times, and obviously the same thing online. Yes, we go back. So really that kind of transparency I found has been critical in terms of implementing it.
But what I understood is that you believe in this model where you're transparent with the customers, transparent and communicating, and on the other side going low and high. Now I'm not sure whether you dropped out. Maybe we have some technical difficulties. But one question we just got in the chat actually is about exactly this box office pricing and what happens when the price changes when you're standing at the line. So this is the question that we got. So one thing to make also clear, we do believe in the transparent communication, and also sometime before the show, let's say it's let's take an example of 7:30 p.m. of this movie. So if I want to go to this movie and I go at 7:15 to the cinema, to the box office, and I see the price, this price won't change anymore. So sometime before the show, let's say 15, 30 minutes, 1 hour, depending again on the exhibitor, the price changes stop. So that again, the customer has the advantage to stay there. You don't see two people on the line, and when they both buy a ticket, you get a different price. There is also transparency with this. So this is all in the settings and how you do the dynamic pricing. In the meantime, maybe another question, or actually I just remembered, Patrick, you asked me about the reaction of distributors. That's also a very fair question that we've also gotten in our chat. So on one side, the results of higher revenues, even if it's on the lower end of so the 5% higher revenue, this means that when your revenue as an exhibitor are higher, the share that the exhibitor gets, it stays the same, but the amount that they get also is higher. So what we've seen so far in the cinema industry is that the reaction of distributors is positive. We've spoken with several of them. So they're also happy when they get more money. So again, as I mentioned, it's a win-win situation, price differentiation and dynamic pricing for both exhibitor and distributor and the moviegoer if communicated correctly.
Did we get any further question that from the audience?
Yes, I'm looking here, and we have the question, where should we start with our pricing? So I will show briefly one of the slides. So where to start, especially what we've seen with smaller chains. Smaller, I mean a couple of screens, small or even bigger. We usually recommend, and in our experience, it's easy to start from left to right. So maybe today you are here in the static world, maybe you're in the differentiated world. So first recommendation that we usually do is to understand better the data that you have. What has happened historically? What are the patterns of customer behavior? When are your peaks of sales? For which type of movies, for which genres? And this you can do either in-house with your data science team, or you can do it externally with a partner. And then once you understand the data, you can move forward to aligning your goal on one side. The management needs to align a goal. What do we want to achieve through pricing, in general through pricing, and then how and what small implementations can you do? Should that be increase in online sales? The example that we had from cinema is a slightly lower price online to incentivize this, and again the communication. Should it be revenue, then you can see how to regulate the prices to achieve that. So yes, there are different ticketing systems, and this also depends a little bit. So maybe coming to the 3 steps that I showed for introducing dynamic pricing. So on one side, again, understanding the pricing data, the historical data, connecting to the ticketing system is always one thing. So it really depends on the technical capabilities of the ticketing system the exhibitor has. On our side at Smart Pricer, at the moment we are integrated with a few ticketing systems, couple Compeso here in Germany, one of the local ones. With Vista we are discussing at the moment. We have scoped a one-way interface and discussing how to move forward. So on the question as to how easy it is, I can say that it usually takes a few months to set the whole process, but this also is on one side how to communicate the new system, understanding the data, parallel to this connecting and checking how everything works technically, and then going live. So those 3 steps that I've mentioned here usually take a few months. Could be 1 month, it could be 2 months, and it really depends on the technical capabilities. It was great pleasure for us to have you all here. Feel free to send us a message either to Patrick or to me if you would like to discuss more about the topic. This was the first webinar that was co-hosted on the topic for cinema. So for us, it's also a learning experience, and we hope that you also learned something today. I'm happy to continue the discussion, and thank you so much for joining.